Good afternoon, everybody. It is the afternoon of the final day of the year, December 31st, 2025, and we're back for the fourth episode of Trust Issues. I'm joined by, of course, the incomparable Emily, and I'm excited we're going to do a little bit of a year in review, kind of touch on all the stuff legislatively and policy-wise that got either passed or debated or butchered this year, and then go into, I guess, detail on pretty much anything that has some interest. I definitely wanted to kind of wrap up and put a little bit of a bow on some of the clarity talk from last year, because I've been not shy about lambasting clarity as it stands right now in the Senate specifically, which is a work in progress, but it's not looking fantastic for a couple of reasons, for DeFi specifically, that is. And then we'll just kind of, I don't know, we'll talk a little bit about what we have coming up for next year. But Emily, it's good to see you. How are you doing?
Good. Clarity, the Muddy Act. It feels like gaslighting.
Yes. Actually, yeah. That's yes, perfect. That's the perfect way to describe it. It is
that always makes me really mad.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Genius is kind of like that too. Although, what do they depend? They really just depend on nobody reading them. Is kind of the long and short of it.
Yeah, I just, that's how politics are working these days, and I don't think our founding fathers ever could have predicted that this would be the types of things that are going down, and like all of the controls that they tried to put in place are just being completely ignored. Or, anyways, here we are.
Yeah, I think we can start with a quick summary of what we've talked about with Genius. I don't want to linger on it too much, just because the first several episodes were all about it, and we'll talk about it again next year, because of course now we are in the period wherein, Genius was signed, but we're still waiting for policy to catch up. So the law and the framework is there and established, and it's been accepted and signed, and it's there, but like none of those rules and anything in Genius is really being enforced right now.
It's still in the discussion framework. I forget the official term, period, though, where it's not fully activated because they don't have all of the parameters defined. It's just the wording of the bill itself that was passed.
Yeah, so that'll be, I don't know how I feel about how it's going to start, initially. I'm kind of curious. I haven't seen any indication of like movement or change, or just with any of the like specific makeups for backing assets with either Tether or Circle, to be honest. And technically, as it stands on the page, they should be, if they want to still be, compliant in the United States post Genius like being fully enacted. And I was going to ask you about that, because I haven't really seen not even really a whisper from either about any of it. I find that very strange.
I think we're in a big distraction phase right now, right? Like the hot topic on at least Twitter, which I really don't like to consider how much time I spend on there, but the hot topic on Twitter is about that, podcast kiddo that went and uncovered fraud that was actually uncovered in 2019.
Before that, yes.
And made a really cute video about it. And I'm like, oh, he's so cute. And then everyone's like, this is citizen journalism, fund it to the max. And it's like these people need to be prosecuted. It's like, these people have been prosecuted. There's been 98 convictions, and 60 something people are in jail, and there's well over 120 years of jail time and well over $100 million in fines. Like, what are you talking about, man? It's moving. Just because this cutie pie showed up and knocked on the door of a daycare like a creep doesn't mean that it's news. It just means that you can't read.
Yes. Well, reading is hard.
It's hard for my third grader. We're working on it.
It's one of those things. It's very convenient for that to be narrative dominating right now.
Yeah.
So, at some point, something else will be trendy, and we'll dig up again something else. I did think that was interesting. I knew it had been going on for a number of years, because I've read some about some of that whole invest. This has nothing to do with crypto. Although, actually, you could make a segue to say, once again, a good use case for open source transaction documentation could be the distribution of taxpayer funds through a government into various receiving entities, and someone might want some oversight there. And a little extra accountability never hurt anybody when it comes to public money. So if you're going to take it and spend it, then I don't know, let us take a look. I want to get in there. I want to take a look and see where it's all going, because I think we'd all be a lot angrier if we, like, I feel like we think we know and we think it's bad, and it's probably just like so much worse. Yes.
I don't know. I mean, that's all. I think that's pretty obviously like a distraction tactic, because the Epstein files are starting to come out. Congress voted to not redact them at all. They're still being redacted. And then the whole funny thing about how all you got to do is copy paste the redacted pieces into any text app and they show right up because maybe they don't have Adobe Pro anymore.
Oh my God, that was iconic.
I told my brother about that, who is now a Canadian resident, but like trying to become a citizen. I told him about that, and he used to be like super involved in American politics. And by involved, I don't mean like on the couch. I mean he was like active. And like he like didn't even believe me, and then he went and looked at it and like had a laughing fit and was just like so aghast at it. And I was like, these are just like the basic checks. Yeah, but these are the basic checks that you do before you send out like your fucking resume, so they don't see all the edits you made. Like what?
Don't know how. The skills extend to rudimentary use of Microsoft Paint, and that's it.
And then people are honestly, they would have had a better job with Paint, right? Because if you block it out and then you like take a screenshot, whatever. But like details. The types of things that people get like so exceptionally indignant about, it's so crazy to me, because it's like, yes, fraud is bad, and the president is pardoning the biggest fraudsters we've ever seen.
Different flavor of fraud.
I mean, sorta. He literally can't run a charity organization in New York State for stealing money from children's cancer research. But like, whatever. It doesn't matter. This is totally bipartisan.
Details. We're getting, so to bring it home, I do think genuinely, I mean, one of the ways that a blockchain gets sold, conceptually, is the ability to store information and have it be publicly viewable and accessible. And I think there's a lot of applications wherein I could see that being a good thing. This has always seemed like it should be one of them. So, things of, especially at this point, because I mean, there is such a deep inherent like distrust of anything coming out of the government. I mean, like, who's to say what of any data is even, it's driving markets, to receive and hear and interpret most of this stuff. And we have at this point, we have absolutely nothing to suggest that, and this is not a new problem, maybe exacerbated now, but this has been the case for a long time, escalating. And I think that, one of the things that people sort of had in their head that would be cool to see politically with the growing evolution of blockchain as an industry was some sort of movement on this front. And that's always seemed like a losing battle to me, because why would anyone trying to get away with anything build a rule to make it harder for them to get away with the stuff that they're trying to get away with? So on that note, clarity is another one of the big talking points this entire year, and now of course being punted into 2026. We will see. So as a quick recap, it began actually a while ago with a piece of legislation that you may be familiar with, Fit 21, and that never went anywhere. That's not entirely true.
Let's recap Fit 21.
So yeah, the whole point here is trying to establish. This is a very nutshell version. We can go into some detail a little bit later, but the whole point is effectively trying to determine what constitutes several key important defining terms in and around crypto as an industry, namely decentralization. I'm going to get to why this is funny in a second. Decentralization, functional, establishing jurisdictional oversight based on specific government agencies who have oversight into specific things, and trying to delineate more literally who gets to enforce laws in what capacity over what stuff, because a lot of this is very new and we don't really have proper classification yet. And there was, if you remember, dig back in time here, if you were paying attention several years ago, there was already a lot of drama in and around Fit 21 because of several terms being included with definitions that made it very hard for certain things to continue. The big one being broker. What defines a broker? What rules do brokers have to follow? And the specific piece of wording in this bill that caused the most drama was specifically forcing crypto adjacent or crypto involved brokers, by their definition, to comply fully with all AML and KYC identification processes and confirmation, counterterrorism, anti-counterterrorism financing, and anti-money laundering.
But then how was broker defined?
And then broker was basically just defined as anybody who at any point in time custodies through basically any capacity crypto for anybody and does basically anything with it, and a whole bunch of stuff. The definition was written very poorly and without any recognition of any nuance. And what happened is that we accidentally, quote unquote, swept up basically every DeFi protocol into that thing, and created a rule set that was impossible for them to follow without sacrificing the entire purpose of DeFi.
That checks out.
Put a pin in that, because Clarity addresses that sort of, but with one huge problem. So really quick, before we leave Fit 21, that passed the House and was vetoed by the president, who at the time was Biden. So that was dramatic at that point. The goal, the bumper sticker being sold to you there was, let's get
protecting DeFi. Yes, okay.
Yeah, let's get some clarification into this so that the people who are enforcing rules that govern this industry actually have something to enforce, and they're not just shotgun approaching law enforcement as it touches all of crypto. That didn't work out. Fast forward to now. So earlier this year, Clarity, as it stands, passed the House and is currently sitting in the Senate. And the Senate is Frankensteining it, as often as they're there. A lot of vacation.
Yes.
So now that the version that passed the House was actually not a terrible piece of legislation. There were some specific protections in there that are really nice, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about quickly here. So there are now two distinctions with DeFi protocol. There's the code, there's the protocol itself, and then there is the front end, the way that people interact with the protocol. Clarity, as it came out of the House and went into the Senate, offered protections from excessive enforcement to the whole bundle of those two pieces. There was nothing specific that targeted the front end of a protocol to have to follow specific rules and comply with certain things based, AML and KYC. Now,
honestly, like the future of finance with the user experience defined by the absolutely ancient boomers in the Senate sounds almost like a novelty at this point, but yeah.
You'll find that that's a common theme, right? So the question you end up asking yourself after you dig into this a little bit more is like, okay, is this written this way because you don't understand what it is you're writing legislation about, or because you're purposely trying to manufacture a place wherein this specific thing, being DeFi, is kneecapped? And honestly, it's pretty easy to assume the former, but pretty hard to ignore the possibility that it's the latter once you dig a little more, because it's like deliberately, it looks like specifically manufactured to me.
Like, okay, so here's where my really ignorant critique comes out. And it's very similar to a lot of issues that seem to have been, partisan soapboxes, which is, why are we so concerned about this particular use case when it comes to, I guess, what is maybe presented as consumer protection? And we're significantly less concerned about things like subscriptions that renew without your consent, or, being sold or, forced to sign something that you don't fully comprehend because you're not a literal lawyer and can't afford one, or why it's so difficult to get medications prescribed to you by board certified physicians because somebody places an artificial cap on the production because they're worried about the influx of drugs being used inappropriately, therefore they drive people to the black market. Like there's just so many places that you would think that this stuff, if the interest was truly in protecting the American people, and we're truly worried about what is my thing doing, and we're truly worried about what happens, then why are we hyper fixated on this?
I think that we know that it's not about consumer protection.
Well, it's never been about that. I'm just saying, like, it's such a disingenuous argument. It feels like punching through tissue.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, there's too many instances where you can disprove that that's a priority for anybody. But there are some, like, as we've been kind of covering with regards to Genius and now Clarity, there's just way too much to suggest that this is more about securing profits for certain groups of people. It's money. It's always money.
It's always been the money.
So the thing that we're concerned about right now is, and honestly, I want to get into one little avenue of this in just a second with regards to like the hyper politicization of crypto itself, because the piece of legislation getting added into, or the literature specifically getting added into Clarity, or looking to try to be added into Clarity now from the Senate, comes from, of course, the Democratic side, which tries to enshrine some protections for protocols, but not front ends. And there's some questionable stuff in there that makes it very hard for, like, for example, let's take Uniswap, for example. It would be easy and they would be protected from the code specifically that they've created to run this protocol. That stuff could be considered as like, okay, we'll protect that. None of that is good to anybody en masse without a front end. And that front end is a centralized piece of infrastructure that is required to interact with this protocol. Unless you're really in the know-how to interact with it specifically by yourself without the use of any of that kind of stuff, which you can use by writing your own code. Sure. Okay. That does not apply to almost anybody. And so the vast majority of people are using this front end. And by that, I literally just mean the website. The website where you connect the wallet and see the stuff and click the buttons and do the swaps and interact with the code that is Uniswap. And that's not protected.
I think what's most interesting about that, honestly, is that, you know, from a business person's standpoint, they're creating more opportunities for middlemen when the entire drive is to remove the middlemen. And then, you know, it sounds like a bureaucratic racket where it's like if this one firm pays the $5 million annual fee to be a certified government contractor in this particular sector in order to service or, you know, be allowed, then you can pay them, you know, X amount of money in order to get the nice interface, right? Like it just, that's like the only path that I can really understand it as, you know, here's an opportunity to reinsert middlemen when the entire point was to remove the middlemen. And like, that feels very silly to me. And like, you know, while I understand, this is like a little bit of a non sequitur, while I understand, you know, wanting to ensure that when it comes to financial applications, the end user of that financial application are not going to be like tricked into doing something that they don't want to do. That makes sense. But like if you sign on to any stock trading platform, you have to have a pretty good idea of what those buttons do. Nothing is stopping you from setting up a perp trade in a very bad way, right? Like you can short yourself straight into bankruptcy if you don't know what you're doing just by like clicking around. So like I don't understand why the focus is crypto, but beyond that, like as someone with severe ADHD, I am constantly infuriated by the amount of red tape, paperwork, you know, difficult process that you have to follow in anything, it feels it feels like the entire system is built to work against you. And this feels like another one of those scenarios where, like, yeah, if I really wanted to change the display of something, I can easily, you know, like leverage some AI tooling and be like, modify this to make a version that works for me, which means XYZ. And like, I guess not a lot of people have that know-how, but like at the same time, you know, if the focus is going to be ensuring that this is understandable, people aren't exposing themselves to tremendous risk, like why is it so fixated on this one point, and why it has that, like, where is the precedence for it? It's standing on thin air, and they're sitting there arguing over it. And like, they're literally we talked about this when Lindsay was here, the least productive Congress ever by
so much,
tenfold, logarithmically the least productive.
The interesting, I mean, the other, just as you talk about precedent, we don't have any. So part of the problem here is that it has to be established. And once it's established, especially in an area or an industry, a niche like crypto that has so much nuance, it's very, very difficult, especially when the people in charge of establishing it are either illiterate when it comes to the stuff that they're governing, or purposely ignoring certain pieces. And that, when I say that, I mean, like, okay, so with clarity, if there is, on its face, it seems like a common sense rule that any platform wherein someone can show up with money and turn it into different money or move it somewhere else, that there needs to be some sort of like protection to make sure that they're not doing anything awful and heinous with the money. That is like a really easy argument to make, and it's very hard to disagree with it without just being accused of being a criminal. And the only argument, the only leg that you really have to stand on when you say I disagree is privacy and personal digital autonomy and sovereignty as an individual. And that is really not a super sexy argument to make, because in no way, shape, or form does that extend to any other area of our lives. We don't have privacy in anything at all, anything under the sun. And on its face, blockchain is pretty bad for privacy because it's the most trackable way that we could send and receive value between each other.
I want to pause on that.
Okay.
I think something to consider when you're talking about obscurity versus transparency, right?
Okay.
Is that if everything is transparent, you can't selectively remove information about a person to create a narrative, right? You can't p-hack an individual's experience or transactions, but that's absolutely something you can do in a centralized environment. Someone can change the narrative by presenting only specific data. And this is what we see every single day, time after time, when you're getting force-fed bad narratives with no data or misinterpreted data on the timeline, where you're only reading headlines and you're not doing any of the exploration yourself. And that's one of the things that crypto really brings to the table, where you get to protect your personal sovereignty, where you're not at risk of somebody completely obfuscating what your intentions are. But anyways,
I think that's a good distinction to make. I don't know. I honestly kind of struggle with this one, like how to. One of the things I wanted to do a little bit today, kind of as a thought experiment, and we can put a pin in this and push it to a little bit later, because I wanted to at least finish recapping kind of what we saw this year altogether. But I was curious to try to work through with you how one might rewrite that specific kind of piece of this legislation to actually protect DeFi. Because if you look at it like quickly as a quick glance, there kind of seems to be only two options. One is just let them do it, and the other one is what they're doing now, lock it down. And neither one of those seems fantastic.
So I think we already have proper legislation for this, and that proper legislation is the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. That already exists. We have that. Those guidelines are well defined. If you've ever worked at a large company producing consumer facing software in any capacity, or even B2B software, there is somebody whose job is to check for compliance. And that compliance is it usable? Is it readable? Is it, am I going to do something by accident? Am I going to miss the intention of a button because it's the wrong color, right? Maybe I have color blindness. Maybe it doesn't adapt to like a text to voice thing if you're blind. Maybe it doesn't properly integrate in all these things. Maybe the buttons are too close together, so I might accidentally click it. All of those things. There is an individual at all of these companies working on that. And the way that the American legal system works and consumer protections have been defined to work unique to America and no other, westernized modern country, is that we don't set forth consumer protections. We have a legal system consisting of lawsuits meant to surface the infractions and enable the party bringing suit against the company to punish them through financial restitution. Like, this framework exists. There is no reason to add more framework on this. And we continually, I don't know, on my keyboard, we continually do silly things like this where, what's the example I keep reading about? Grand Theft Auto versus carjacking. Grand Theft Auto was already a crime. And then somewhere someone got really upset about the concept of carjacking, which is still Grand Theft Auto and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, right? Like, these things are crimes. That you don't need a new crime to bundle this crime. Like, it exists. You don't have to overcomplicate the legal system when this has already been covered. It's like coming up with special corner cases, which feels nuts to me. So I don't understand why they're trying to make these laws when there's already things in place to protect consumers.
I might argue with you on that one to say,
yeah.
So yes, I agree with the idea that conceptually we have consumer protections for criminal activity from a company or from another individual.
It's not even criminal. It's like exploitive activity.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, sure. For whatever. In an instance where, because point by point, you say a procedure by which an individual can bring a case against a company and seek financial restitution for damages in pretty much any capacity if you can prove it. Okay. We already know that whole thing is an absolute mess. Without getting into details or giving away anything, identifying someone very close to me had an instance where they suffered greatly at the hands of fellow coworkers at a company. The company allowed it to continue and knew about it, and then ended up kind of like retroactively punishing the person close to me for being involved in this and never did anything about the other one. So there was absolutely grounds for a suit. The problem is that it was a $100 billion company, and it was a single person who had a grievance, and there is no way in hell that person is ever going to get real restitution or anything from that company. So we already know that in a world where anecdotes like this matter greatly, because that's what consumer protections are supposed to be there for, to protect against the anecdote, not the generality, that's a problem. So I would push back to say that may be the case on paper, but it doesn't matter and it doesn't work that way in reality. And then two, in the instance where we're still talking about the company, if we're talking about a decentralized protocol code written and maintained by a collective of nameless people who contribute to it to keep it running, who are you bringing this case against? Which is the Ethereum quandary.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's the thing about it is like that's kind of one of the problems that we face in general, right? It's almost like public art or something, right? Or you could even go so far as to draw a comparison between like water being free because it runs in rivers and Nestle fencing off the accessible points of the river and bottling it and selling it.
Sure.
These are resources, and these resources can be used openly until somebody comes and gates the resource and keeps it from you. And the person who gates it, right, the literal gatekeeper of this, then becomes culpable in this scenario. And I bring up what the standard is in the American legal system and the expectation, only because that's where the precedent lies. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's why our system is set up that way. And there is an advantage to being able to navigate that system successfully. And they don't tell you how to navigate that system, right? Why would anybody in power tell you how to get them or get what you're owed?
No, absolutely.
So I guess like what I'm saying though is, why in particular is this being targeted when it's effectively open source versus or in the case where it's not, where it's closed source, when you have somebody like a centralized exchange. So what makes it unique? Correct
me if I'm wrong. What your argument is, let's just stick with Uniswap as the example. So you, again, two things: you have the code, you have the front end. Front end is maintained by the lab. The lab is a company with people who work for it and named known individuals. Yeah. Marketing department, C-suite, all that stuff. Your position would be that leave the protocol alone. If the protocol gets used for something malicious, someone affected by that malice could bring the suit, in this case, against the lab. They should be held liable for misuse of the protocol through the product they've created, the app Uniswap. And then you would be focusing on the lab itself for facilitating this is kind of like what happened with Telegram. You're going after the top for allowing the protocol to be used in such a way that facilitated the malice. And then you're kind of you're not even really going after the individuals who if you can find them, great. But, in the instance where we're talking about a decentralized exchange, maybe not. But still, the lab would be the one on the hook. So it would then behoove them to do something to prevent that from happening so that they would be able to shift the blame. And see, that's where I kind of then fall back into the idea like, okay, well, what are they going to do? They're going to ask for identification before anyone uses the protocol. So that
how do you take the steps to close the gap that's making you vulnerable, right? That's like a problem. So it's tricky, right? Where it's like, let's see, what's the best way to describe this? There's two types of core freedoms, and freedom as a concept is pretty broadly misunderstood, I think. There's freedom to do whatever you want, regardless of who it impacts. And then there's freedom to live your life safely and securely and to pursue your own desires and goals without causing harm externally, right? And I think that this divide and this misunderstanding is a defining principle of American politics, where and in American policy, where are we in support of freedom of the individual to do whatever they want, regardless of the impact it could have externally, or are we in pursuit of freedom of the individual to enable them to pursue what they want to pursue by protecting them from external harm? So like, what side of the coin does this land on? If I, put a tree swing in my front yard and the neighborhood kids stop by the tree swing to swing on it, and one day the rope breaks and someone breaks their wrist, like who's to blame there, right? And, in American legal precedent, I, the property owner, the person who put it up, am to blame. There is no responsibility on the party that participated in it willingly. And I'm not that that's a great example to
it kind of is actually
die on this hill for, but like it makes you wonder, right? Like, how come you, an individual with freedom of choice, are not responsible for the choices you make? I don't know, but like, you're free to pursue it, you're free to access it. I'm a friendly neighbor. Like it's these types of complexities where it's like, oh, I should have put up a sign that absolves me from,
sure
lawsuit or something. Like and that's how we end up with this crazy overly bureaucratic system, which leaves the openings for the black market, right? Like all of this, like one begets the next. So like at what point do you become responsible? Is it when you hit legal adulthood at 18? Is it when it's not on your private property? How do you know if you're on someone's private property? If it's like, you know, thousands of acres or like hectares, like what is the point that this turns? And, you know, are there any real standards around your own personal responsibility and your own personal decisions? Or are we just assuming that like government is daddy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's really hard to not pick a side on this, because if you add, like, I'm not saying the argument isn't nuanced, but I'm saying, like, how do you know what is what without actually having a framework or a definition there? And I think that this entire debate is walking that line in a really uncomfortable way.
I think that one thing I've continuously come back to that honestly applies to both the tire swing example and the Uniswap example would be, what does the thing in question that could be misused or could be used totally fine, what does it purport to be? What does it present as to the person looking at it? And the nuance there could then be applied to both things. So the nuance with the tire swing in your front yard would be, okay, it presents as a safe place for someone to go swing and, you know, do the thing that you would expect to do with a tire swing. The nuance then being that it's also on your private property. Mm-hmm. And you're not advertising that it is a safe playground for like people to come use for public use. On the other hand, the decentralized exchange purports to be a place where you, the individual, can bring this currency, that currency, this currency, that currency, and complete actions A, B, and C with it between other people as facilitated by the protocol. And that's kind of all that it purports to do. So how much responsibility lands on the lab for maintaining that front end based on like what disclosures do they make to new people who show up to this protocol and expect to do A, B, and C with it, not knowing that D, E, and F are also possible, and those might be crimes that maybe they could get swept up in, because they don't know that if we're talking about staking, they don't know that on the back end, slashing is a risk on behalf of a validator who behaves nefariously. So that's the area, I guess, like if I was to try to come up with a way that you would have to put some sort of policy into place, it would be dictating to people who have a thing, how can you advertise this thing to people who will see it and might interact with it so that they are properly informed about whatever it is that they're doing. And that's where your responsibility stops.
So if we draw a parallel between the current way we handle a skill that you're allowed to pursue as long as you've obtained a license, versus, what the slippery slope is of it, right? So like a kid, like a literal child, cannot get behind the wheel of a car and drive it. They don't have a driver's license. I mean, physically they can, but they shouldn't. It's not safe. It's not legal, right?
But there's policy and rules and legislation and laws and all sorts of stuff to prevent that situation from happening.
So that's what I'm getting at, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So then we have the extreme of that, which puts us in the current fiat environment in American finance, where you have to have a whole bunch of certifications, pass tests, bonds, all of these things that protect you and your ability to act in favor of whoever you're acting on behalf of. If you're, a financial advisor, have a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, all of these things, right? However, if you're an individual investor, it's just a wealth hurdle. You just have to be rich enough to be able to get there. And DeFi famously brings these tools down to anybody at any financial level. So I think the implied assumption as far as investment, if you're rich enough, is that you've gotten this much money so far and managed to keep it. Therefore, you can probably figure out what type of risk you're exposing yourself to. However, all in all, it limits who's able to take advantage of these opportunities, right? And we still see the wealth gap widening. So, is that the type of thing that they're going to settle on? And what's the ultimate consequence of that? where, oh, you have to be licensed to some degree. You have to swear that you're rich enough to do this, whatever it is, versus, it's just software, and you can use software to do what you want, right? Like I can use iMovie to make a cute little family thing that I send out to, my aunts and uncles and cousins, whatever, so they can get a live pic of what's going on, or I can make a snuff film.
Right.
Like there's extremes.
I think that because I would agree with, so Jay Heat in the comments said education, which is, the single term to describe the solution. The problem is that is such an unbelievably gargantuan undertaking, because we have to address the problem with any of these things in a system that's as convoluted and intricate as just like US policy in general as an umbrella, is that the second you pull on one thread, 400 other things come out. So if you say education, I say, I agree, you're undoubtedly correct. However, we are eviscerating the Department of Education. Why does that matter? Has it ever done anything bad? Absolutely. Sure. There's waste, fraud, and abuse, whatever, bullshit, give me that. There's also, though, a lot of protections, and there's a lot of guarantees and things like corners that would be cut without this kind of a thing. So take that and apply it to this. We're talking about the entire rework and redesign of money as a concept, changing the way that you can interact with it, what you can do with it, who you can do what with what, in a whole bunch of different, completely alien to almost everyone, new ways. You can't simply teach about that in a way that is efficient in any way, shape, or form, because everyone's starting at a different point. I had this same realization the other day when I was getting breakfast at this diner, and the process to pay, right, is they flip a little tablet over to you. They've entered in your amount. You approve it. You sign the thing. You pick a tip amount, and you say, yes, confirm, good deal, whatever. Yes, no, receipt, whatever. Flip the thing back to them, and you're good to go. Someone who has no idea, has never used a touchscreen before, the guy in front of me in line was older, didn't know any. It had to be no, touch this. Okay, nope, tap this. Okay, nope, whatever. That requires a different amount of education than someone who's just never seen this particular checkout program before and is like, oh yeah, no, just click that, this, that, whatever. It's totally different. So then the problem you immediately find yourself in is, how do you even begin to inform someone about the risks? Because Emily, your point would stand. Like, someone who's gotten to a certain point financially is aware of how risk determination works and how it works when you are submitting to a venture style investment versus a different kind of investment versus, something with this kind of a track record that you could audit and look at yourself versus like a brand new startup company that maybe you're going to get involved with and it's hyper risky, whatever. You could feel comfortable making that determination, but someone else might just read on its face like, oh, this is a decentralized protocol that lets me swap currencies. Okay, these are concepts that I don't understand, but I could go read about them and understand it. And now I come away with this textbook definition of that. And that's kind of why Clarity is so funny, because as Fit 21 laid out this framework to determine what is decentralized and what is functional, it never defined any of those terms. So decentralized basically is just written as, do you know what the developer threshold on like a decentralized protocol is for it to meet the requirements to be active and functioning? 2 people.
Tell us. Yeah, 2. Huh?
2. The definition of functioning is just, it works. Everything falls into that category. Even on a day when like an entire network were to go down, it's still technically functional because you could fix the problem.
Okay, so like here's my problem with saying, oh, it's just education. 1 in 5 Americans are functionally illiterate.
Yeah, and that's getting worse.
Yeah, it's getting a lot worse. I think just in like something like 2017, it was like.
Can we clarify too that when we say, like, when I say illiterate, there's a whole bunch of different ways that we could be talking about. Like, there's the literal definition of someone who is functionally illiterate, but then there's also someone who is completely literate by the definition and is now engaging with or experiencing a totally new thing that they have not learned specifically. And so then you can be technologically illiterate with DeFi. And that's almost everybody because it's new. There's not a lot of great information about it. It's hard to learn about. There's a lot of terms. We've basically invented a new language to talk about it. So
let me
we're
just
compounding the
clarify.
illiteracy problem.
When I say illiterate, I mean they can't read and comprehend a string of sentences.
Sure.
Like they could probably read one simple sentence, right? But when it comes down to complexity and all of the things that you would be agreeing to in this case, right? Like, what is the ability of Congress to define what goes into this Clarity Act, where budgets are constantly being slashed and every single department is asked to do more with much less money? Like it's just not possible. So like, where do you bridge the gap, right? Where is, American freedom to pursue your own level of wealth based on your own understanding? And where do you draw the line of protecting people from themselves, right? Are we going to like 5150 people who are showing gambling addiction? Like, is there a financial equivalent to that? Because America kind of is built on the financial ruin of some for the benefit of few. Like, yes. I just don't understand how the focus can be so strong in this one segment where like we have people who don't understand what APR is on a credit card still able to get a credit card. Like it makes, and beyond that, how easy it is for someone's, financially abusive parent just open a credit card under their social security number. And then all of a sudden they're screwed and they're responsible because that's supposed to be your ultimate protection device. Like,
and now, and this is why, because you could go on forever. This is why.
Yeah, like it's just a rabbit hole. And why is it specific to crypto, something that already has a tremendous barrier to entry because you have to know how to use it. You can't just, like, I recall explicitly when I was learning how to use a decentralized exchange and learning how to use self-custody wallets. And I was dealing with a token that had what used to be called reflections. And I don't know what it's called. And let me know if I need to deep dive into it.
No, we can, we'll touch it. If you're curious about reflections, we've talked about it on the show before. It's been a long time. We can do it later.
Yeah. Okay. So I was specifically trying to move a token that had reflections in it. And I had this balance that I wanted to go from, one wallet app to another wallet app. Maybe it was desktop to mobile. And I unknowingly created a brand new wallet and transferred it to my new wallet instead of entering my seed phrase. So it would just appear in my other wallet application instead of getting a whole new address. And like, then I was punished with 5% because that's what the reflections tax was. And like, that's a fee I paid and learned the difference when I was like, what happened? Why did the balance go away? This wasn't, the chain coin. That's, I shouldn't have paid gas in it. What's going on? And then somebody explained it to me. And like, yes, rookie mistake. Everyone starts there, right? Like I'm very far away from that at this point, but like they're working on legislating something that the barrier to entry of is so difficult when it's quite easy for an individual who just turns 18 to go get a credit card with a $5,000 balance on it with zero credit history. Mm-hmm. Like I don't understand why they're so concerned about this niche. And they're zero concerned about predatory practices that happen every single day. And they're burning taxpayer dollars to do it. And they're not doing other things that can protect them. It's just, it's infuriating.
I think you answered your own question in the beginning of this spiel when you talked about the efforts to reinsert the middle person phenomenon. So here's the problem, right? Because if you take the credit card example for a young kid to just get one, if that kid screws it up, it's so easy to go after them because of what needs to be documented on their behalf to get the card in the first place, how much data is taken from them and already known and blah, 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 whatever. In this instance, enough to be dangerous. And in this instance, it's possible that with the right know-how, like I have enough know-how to be able to move money on chain to a wallet that does not have any known documented link to my identity and then do stuff with it. And at that point, I'm effectively anonymous. Now, most people are going through a centralized exchange that you KYC to be there. And then there's immediately an on-chain trail of where that money goes and which wallet it goes to. And let's leave mixers out of the conversation right now because that's a whole other thing. But because that potential for me to take my money out of the current traditional system and decentralize it, wash it effectively, and put it on chain without any tie to my identity, whether I dress up in something and leave my place of residence and go elsewhere in the world to use a Bitcoin ATM to on ramp there and then swap here to this and whatever, or any, any number of other options. That's the problem. So why do you treat it with so much extra, oversight or extra attention? It's because we're trying to make sure that can't happen, because we have to keep the status quo what it is now with regards to the money system, which is why this thing is such a threat, which is why it gets obliterated legislatively.
So here's the thing though. What we're trying to solve for is a corner case. We're not trying to solve for the majority of use, right? Sure. And this particular problem kills software companies all the time, where they get they get hyperfixated on a corner case and they forget to solve for the majority, right? Like, this is a corner case. You may have to pursue it independently. It may require white glove service. It may, need special handling. You may eventually have to build some features to accommodate it so you can correct what goes wrong. But 99% of the time, that's not what somebody's doing. So how much effort are you putting towards protecting people from the outlier? And while the outlier may be dangerous, is that the best use of time, especially when you're sitting there trying to predict what the outlier might do and not having any actual use data coming out of it? The whole thing is just kind of bonkers. And I'm telling you, as someone who works in software, this sinks companies all the time. You have to be so mindful of not fixating on corner cases and not trying to solve for everything, because it just grinds all progress to a halt. You'll sit there, you'll rack your brain for days of different little things that can come out, and all you had to do was push the feature, and someone's like, oops, I clicked in a crazy order, and now I'm stuck.
Yeah. I would say though that the methodology applied by a tech company trying not to get bogged down in corner cases is exactly the inverse of the way policy is supposed to work, wherein you protect the anecdotes from getting stuck and lost in the weeds.
So the thing is, it's just an example, right? But the thing, I think, where policy really loses sight is the fact that there is nuance and there is humanity behind it. And what we're trying to do is automate policy into not needing any human intervention, even though no matter what, any violation is going to go through a court with a judge and a jury. And that's where the nuance is supposed to be applied.
Yes.
Someone's talking trash because I got nothing crypto related on my page. We can address that in a second.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And I think what I would add is just that, another way that legislation and policy gets super bogged down. One of the reasons that I think we almost never really see any meaningful progress on anything that is a real issue in this country specifically, is what I'll speak to, even though this applies everywhere, is the idea that we do get so lost in the minutia with a policy that we don't make any progress for fear of not making perfect and complete progress. And you could take pretty much any hot button political issue, whether we're talking about anything from gun control to crypto, and say, okay, maybe the collective majority could agree that some sort of advancement is needed, but we disagree on a lot of minutia. And so rather than pass something that might piss off somebody in order to make some kind of progress, recognizing we could change it if it turned out to be a mistake, because that's how the system is supposed to work, we just end up doing nothing. And then the other side of that coin is that with something like crypto, that does require a lot of nuance, and the fact that it compounds on issues known in the traditional finance system, like you talk about with illiteracy in general, and we're exacerbating every single one of those problems with the implementation of brand new, even more confusing technology and different interfaces. How do you create anything that doesn't just cause 30,000 more problems that I couldn't identify in the first 8 seconds of looking at whatever piece of policy it is? And I don't know. I think the answer is probably, honestly, what you were talking about with regards to leaning on existing protections and just trying to stick to some definitions at first, which is kind of what the point of clarity was. And then that has been long since lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay, so I get it, right? And there's Policy in the pursuit of perfect means a country that's stuck hundreds of years behind the zeitgeist. And it's literally where we are right now, right? People forget about nuance. They forget about the entire legal system and the court system. And I think it just kneecaps us. And then you get, the wealthy contributors who push through things like Citizens United. And now it's no longer about the people, it's about the corporations, right? Like this is what happens. This is how we get to where we are. And this is how everybody becomes an indentured servant to the oligarchs. And like
details.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't have crypto related content on my page because TikTok, when I made my account, was mostly for me to doom scroll and find like the most unhinged stuff ever to make me feel normal. And I only started putting a couple of random things on there as I felt like it. And I used to talk about crypto a lot in Twitter, and then my audience got totally nerfed, and I'm lucky if 6 people see what I tweet, even though I have 11,000 followers.
That whole thing is such a mess.
I'm not salty. But yeah, like I don't know. Like it's the whole thing. I stand where I stand on this. I think that over defining this in a very young industry is ultimately intended to be protectionist, but it's not going to be able to do that job. So, yeah. And the reason it won't be able to do that job is because we're sitting here trying to invent things. Like we're literally back at the first constitutional convention when everybody is partially drunk on cider, wearing wigs and wool suits when it's 100+ degrees with 95% humidity, and everyone's like, "Please, I just want to go home. I guess the Electoral College is fine." How could you possibly ever predict that a vote in California would be worth something like 22% of a vote in Montana? So like. I think it's just you can only do what you can do with the knowledge that you have at the time. And it's meant to be dynamic. The laws are meant to be dynamic as things evolve around it. And you're just not going to be able to make it perfect. And the knowledge gap in America is growing every single day. So like, is slowing down going to solve that? No, we're solving the wrong problems.
So in an effort to end the nihilism a little bit, I do think that you could, if we were to apply our own critique here to ourselves with regards to education, yes. If we were going to try to teach broadly about the whole thing, the comment that I made on TikTok just a minute ago was about education itself is not the conundrum. Standardization is, because of how many different ways different people need to be taught. I mean, anytime you're trying to teach a group of hundreds of millions of people something, there is no one size fits all. You simply just can't operate that way. You will leave people behind. But there's nothing wrong with something being available, even if it ends up not being the right thing for everyone. That's where I think the minutia tackling would come in. So one, if you tried to standardize some sort of basic terminology awareness campaign, wherein here are 10,000 new terms that we've identified have been coined or become redefined as it relates to this industry or this subset, and peruse at your leisure. This is the stuff that we determine you need to know. 10,000 is a number I'm making up. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Then sure, you could start there. You can also tackle it in pockets wherein we would recognize that, okay, hey, here's a way that people who are already very financially literate and savvy can quickly on-ramp to learning this new particular system, in the way that someone who knows how to fly would learn how to fly a new kind of plane. You have the basic concepts down, the rules, radio etiquette, all this kind of stuff, but you've never used this particular platform and that computer is different. Okay, great. You probably need a lot less training than someone who has never flown before. So in that sense, again, I think that you just have to start. So I think the goal here, what I really wanted out of this conversation was, one, to put on display the battle that all of this is going to require to make any progress on, but then to also encourage people to take it more seriously. just because, I'm trying to think of a specific example with this. Let's take decentralization. It's an easy concept to understand. If you break it down, its bumper sticker definition is, an instance where some collective is overall in charge of the operation of a thing, not a single individual or tiny group of concentrated decision makers. Okay. That can apply to a whole bunch of different stuff. Let's apply it to money. Okay, great. Enter DeFi. Okay. But now we also have to bring back to what I was saying earlier about like, what do things purport to be? And actually, Commissioner Hester Peirce talks about this specifically as it regards to the SEC's innovation exemption for DeFi specifically, is we have to be careful of things that masquerade as decentralized, but are actually not. And therein already comes our first piece of nuance, wherein you could say, sure, the collective that contributed code to the open source code bank that is Uniswap is one thing, but the person who determines how you interact with it by building a specific website with specific buttons that could do other stuff is not. And so calling the whole thing completely decentralized is sort of a farce, because we're already now not what we purport to be if we just say decentralized finance protocol.
Yeah, but then there's also, don't forget, there's also, just understanding the difference between centralized and decentralized when it comes to crypto is the second tier of learning, right? You learn about what blockchain is, you learn about what crypto is, and then you're like, oh, okay, how do I get started? Something like a major centralized exchange that I won't name. And then you don't realize that even though you're dealing with crypto, you're dealing with centralized crypto, and it's not protected in the same way. It's entirely in their pocket. Like, it's the whole thing is just like the levels that you go are so deep, right? And that's kind of what takes me back to the legal precedents that we have in America, where things started more open and less regulated, and then as infractions were made over time, industries got more regulated. As people want to protect the environment, they want to protect individuals, they want to protect babies from harm and accidental death, right? Like all of these things that are really ultimately good, but because those changes were the result of something that might have happened 40, 50, 60 years ago, people forget what the drive for those things was. And that is that's where the trickiness comes in, I think, in a lot of these cases. And it's what locks people up, right? Like it's what makes you stuck. And then you find yourself sifting through another bureaucratic legal nightmare where you have to read a bunch of documents in order to understand it. Or to even make an attempt at it. And then you just feel stuck again, because who has the time for that? I'm literally just trying to make enough dollars so I don't, miss rent and get evicted. Like it's such like a trap in and of its own, where, what's that saying? Something like the road to hell is paved in good intentions. Like here we are again, when all I really need is a proper social safety net so I don't end up homeless. like sure. the problems they're trying to prevent would be much more easily solved if we actually gave two shits about individuals holistically, and less so about what they may decide to do with like their financial strategy or their creative output. Like it just seems like a lot of energy pointed in the wrong direction.
I agree. I agree completely. And I think that you could say that is why we are overly interested in aggressively regulating and policing crypto as an industry, because the big danger is, not what it purports to be. The big danger is not that someone might use this for crime. The big danger is that the people currently getting a cut of all this kind of stuff being siloed in the way that it is are not going to get that cut anymore, and we need to shut that shit down.
That is a big danger, especially if you're an elected representative taking donations of egregious sizes enabled by Citizens United. So that's, as an elected official, that is a danger. As a private citizen, I couldn't give two shits. The whole thing is kind of wild, right? Like I think it's all one big hand wavy distraction. And I think a lot of it is just people with their heads too far up their butts to be able to look around and see anything at all going on. They thought it was a rabbit hole, but it was their rectum.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna put that one on a t-shirt too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Tomato.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. In an effort to start to wind us down here a little bit as we near the end of the show.
Of your battery life.
Of my battery life. Yeah, we're going to edit a few. Yeah, fun fact. When you run a morning show off of the phone and then run around and do a bunch of errands and then don't charge it and then come back and try to run another one, the battery doesn't last. And when all of this stuff is plugged together, it can't charge and stream at the same time. Problem.
That is, but just by the way, I can't mail it to you because you can't mail batteries, but the only merch I ever made for my company was, portable chargers. So next time I see you IRL, I'll give you one.
I love that. Yeah, actually, the only crypto related anything that's ever actually given me a useful piece of merch besides just a banger t-shirt was Stellar giving me a battery pack.
There you go. They're a pain in the ass because you can't travel with them because, lithium batteries one time exploded randomly because they rub together. I don't know. Anyways.
So as we kind of I don't know, as I look to, how we're heading into 2026 with all of this, a lot of advancements were made this year, quite a few actually, that make it easier for large companies to be involved with crypto and do stuff with it and hold it legally without getting gone after. And even if a lot of it, because a good handful of it was just done by executive order, which is really not real, but we sort of all pretend that it is.
If Congress pretends it's real, then it's as real is. That's
fair. Yeah, that's very fair. So in that sense, yeah, sure, fine. In the traditional sense, no, not quite. But as long as we're just looking the other way, I expect the hyper-politicization of crypto to deepen next year. I expect that if we see a significant shift in the power structure of Congress next year, that... Oh my God. I snoozed it. There we go.
Power structure of Congress.
The power structure of Congress shifting with midterms. I really, really worry that because of the way we've set it all up from the beginning, Democrats incoming will do exactly what they're trying to do to clarity right now and make it worse. Because instead of looking at it for what it is, they look at it as what it purports to be, which is just a Republican talking point. And that's not good for anybody. Turning crypto into another thing where they're just going to argue about forever and never actually make any advancements on, real problem.
I think
so many different instances wherein that happens to very important things that are now never going to get solved because they make for great stump speeches. We really don't want that to happen with crypto, but it seems almost inevitable at this point.
Yeah, I wonder who wants to fund our super PAC so we can go and lobby properly. But regardless, I think making it.
I'm gonna send. I'll send it to you for just anything you've got on your mind for coming up for next year. I'm excited that we started doing this. We've only got a couple episodes under the belt, but next year's we're gonna hit it even harder.
It's gonna be a knee slapper. So what was I gonna say? I don't remember. However, the diminishing of the economic education and basic fiscal understanding of citizens who operate in a capitalist society is a huge danger. Therefore, we're starting a book club. I think we've talked about this loosely, but I'm putting my foot down. I'm bringing it to life, Frankenstein's monster or not. So if you guys are watching now and you want our little taste into our favorite kind of economics case studies and theories on social interaction and how these things all wrap together and how they relate to each other and crypto, right? And how policy is kind of formed or misformed rather. Stay tuned. I'm gonna slap us together a website on AI, probably compromising fresh water for millions of people in the meantime. So yeah. You guys will be able to follow along that way. And then the way we're going to do it is we'll announce it maybe 6 weeks in advance. You got plenty of time to buy your book and read it at a glacial pace. And then we'll discuss it thoroughly. Uh-oh, did your phone die?
It's okay. The big stream is fine. We can.
Oh, okay. It just went to live paused. Okay, yeah. So that's my plug.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about all the different pieces. I think that, you know, we're kind of still figuring out the basics of how all we want to structure this whole thing. I know, like, I mean, it's so huge. I think if I take anything away from today, right, it's just like if we start to really chase the rabbits down the different holes, then it literally will never end. And we will literally fall victim to the exact same thing that we're kind of lambasting right now with, you know, how policy has worked in general, that, you know, because it's not perfect and because it doesn't address literally everything, we should do nothing instead. So in that sense, I think it would be really cool to identify specific areas wherein you could create something. And I mean, I think through some of the connections that we've been able to make over the years, it's completely possible that literal legislation could get penned out of an endeavor like this. And I think that would be really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think that there's a lesson that Congress can learn from blockchain, and I know we lost half our audience, and I guess we'll have to catch a recording because it records through this, not that, right? So I think there's a big lesson that can be learned in blockchain that people often forget about. And like one of the coolest parts, at least to me, when I really started to understand what was going on in programmable blockchains, is that once the code is out there, once the code has been pushed, right, the smart contracts, you can leverage it however you want to. You can plug all sorts of things into it. You can call it, you can send things through it, you can wrap them back your direction. And that's, you know, those are kind of the building blocks of legislature as well. When they're spending all this time banging their heads against the walls, trying to come up with the perfect solution. Meanwhile, there are things like consumer protections and protections for people with disabilities and protections for financial misgivings and fraud, right? All of this stuff exists. All they have to do is say, this is where things have been defined. And in the future, maybe we'll add to it, but like that simplicity, right? Or building on those foundational building blocks that have been tested, very well pressure tested, is where the opportunity really comes from. So like, I don't know what they're doing. There's too many of them. There's too many cooks in the kitchen to really sit there, especially full of people who don't know what the hell they're talking about at all. To try to come up with policy around this, right? It's like there is no environment ever where I'm going to ask my 8-year-old child on like how to make a complex pastry, right? That doesn't happen, because that's insane. She doesn't know anything about it. She just knows that it tastes good. So, you know, and like maybe if I got really good at it, I could sell it. But like that's it, right? Like that's the extent of what she knows. She doesn't know about food safety. She doesn't even wash her hands after she poops. She's disgusting. Like, anyways.
Yeah, I feel that.
Anyways, your thing died. I don't know if you want to, I'm not that busy, but well.
No, it's okay.
I've only had 6 text messages. It's fine.
We're landing the plane. I was just marinating in kind of, you know, I've been thinking a lot about what I really want to do next year, specifically with this, just because, you know, like you said, after you lit the fire, with, you know, the problem that is Genius. I got super energized to hit this, like just running as hard as possible. And so I'm excited about the book club. I'm excited. I need to carve out more time to start reading some of that stuff, because a lot of the ones that you guys have tossed around, I haven't read. Really? Well,
truly. I mean, I'm getting like references all the time, but I did share a list internally. Yeah, it's good books.
So in that sense, I'm excited about that. I think that it would be really cool to like to write or contribute something legislative to the zeitgeist, even if it goes nowhere. I at least have enough connections to where we could get something read by somebody, and then we could get told specifically like why no one actually gives a shit about whatever it is that we just wrote, which would still be an interesting thought experiment. So I think
it's like security. I know why no one cares, but
for sure.
You know.
Anyway, I think there's a good point to leave it. I do want to end by just saying the little bit cheesy thing that this is our final show of the year in any capacity. We're not running After Dark tonight because everyone's got New Year's Eve stuff, and there's company
It's a
traveling in
holiday.
from. I know, but you know, we still ran 2 shows today, going out with a bang. I feel so unbelievably excited about how many things we did this year. We ran hundreds of shows, tens of millions of live impressions just on the stuff that we talk about, and that really means the world to me, because I know that none of it is really geared towards like how to gamble more effectively, or you know, which like lever to pull to get rich quick and all that sort of stuff. And it's just this like repeated attempt to spread awareness and knowledge about stuff that I just know is going to help people make those decisions for themselves. And I feel really good about where we're at. So I think it's cool that we got to start this right before the end of the year. And I'm excited to roll it straight into 26.
Yeah, it's a party with books.
It's about to be a party with books. Right now we have concepts of books.
Oh,
Anyway.
we'll get there. Okay, cool. Well, I'll talk to you later, and I'll keep sending you my really terrible AI generated websites.
No. You did more than I did in the last 2 months in 10 minutes. So I'm excited about it.
I can't even get my Adderall right now. You don't have an excuse. Other than you're deeply burnt out, which is
yes, that's really
a real thing.
All right. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Sorry that TikTok didn't make it to the end. That's okay. Next time I won't be an idiot and forget to make sure that we're full up on the old battery before we kick off the next stream of the day. We will see you guys.
You don't have like a spare phony somewhere? You don't have like an old phone?
No.
Okay. I don't.
Because I always like have the one and then trade it in for the new one. So I always just have one at a time.
You might have to get like a really cheap
if I was
old
just more organized,
phone.
It would have been charged. It would have been a problem. But
yeah, but,
we'll be back.
You know,
same
backups.
time, same place tomorrow morning for the morning show. 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Central, right back here. And it'll be the first show of 2026. So thanks again. Thanks again, Emily, for hanging out. And we will see all of you in the next one.